The specialty crops, we put out about $1.8 million out on specialty crops. The livestock, the majority of the producers that have applied, and that's 54 million in livestock and 9.8 million for specialty crops. Dairy is received about 36.5 million. So we put out, like I said, 102.5 million. At this point, we'll probably still have some more coming out before the end of September. Most everything's been processed through at this point. But I just want to reiterate that if you haven't looked into it or haven't applied for it, I would recommend that you call that 877-508-8364 or go to farmers.gov/CFAP and try to contact somebody and get signed up in the program, because the deadline is again September 11th. And it's a very helpful program. One of the things is, I did mention that on the one sheet form that it's a self-certification. You put down the tonnage or the crop and the instance that you're applying for. But you do have to have the information on file, on record, in case they want to go back and ask you about it. So you have to keep that on file for 3 years so that you have those records to support what you applied for. And normally I would say that nobody will ever talk to you about it, because the CED and the C County Committee, local people, will have an idea and direct you into the right spot that you would never be questioned on it normally. But sometimes they'll come back and do spot reviews, so you have to have that information available as you go forward the next 3 years. And I'll just kind of glance on that to chat, see if there are any questions or not so far, but I don't see any. And that's pretty much what I have for that. On the CFAP, I would say if you've been affected even on Forest Service lands or BLM by fires, if you've affected by that, there are 3 or 4 programs available to get money to help. Sometimes on the Forest Service, they'll make you withdraw your cattle, move them off of your permit if there's been fires and damaging the grass and feed that's available. And there's programs to help pay you for feed if that does happen to you. So, and programs to help replace fences and waterings and stuff like that. Also, fires is probably the biggest issue that we have sometimes for fixing fences back and repairing waters. We work with NRCS on that a lot. And so if you do have any fire issues whatsoever, I would suggest that, again, you get a hold of the local FSA office and visit with them about what's available for help in those instances. And then drought is another big issue around the state. We have a lot of D3 counties in the state that's affecting grazing, what's available, and there's different programs there for that also. LFP is the biggest one probably, and it gives you money for feed, for 2 or 3 months worth of feed at a time. And also there's an ELAP program which helps with water hauling. A lot of times people have to haul water, and this helps pay for hauling water. And so drought is a big issue in New Mexico, has been for several years. So I would recommend putting together any information you might have and visiting with the local office to help with drought, fires, or even back to the CFAP program, because this is good money to help people get through this hard times. So I would like to see everybody that can utilize it. And again, that's about it. So Chad?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. For those attending, if you have any questions, chat feature found at the bottom of your screen. We'll have time at the end of the webinar to answer those questions. All right, now we'll move on to Mr. Montoya. Mr. Montoya is a graduate of New Mexico State University with a bachelor's degree in range science. He lives in Albuquerque with his family and has served in multiple capacities at NRCS, beginning back in the day as a co-op student in the Albuquerque field office. After graduating from New Mexico State, he accepted an assignment as the Rangeland Management Specialist for the Navajo Nation team at the Window Rock field office in Arizona. Mr. Montoya has also served NRCS in positions in Lordsburg, New Mexico, Douglas, Arizona, Washington, D.C., Indiana, and Wyoming, before finally making it back home to New Mexico, where he has been the State Conservationist since 2012. Mr. Montoya, always a pleasure, and we thank you for joining us today.
All right, thanks, Chad. Really appreciate it, and good afternoon, everybody. Good to be here. Thank you all for inviting me, and thank you for giving me some time to give you all an update. So let me see if I can share my screen, and hopefully this will work according to Tiffany. All right, hopefully that screen is up. Am I good, Chad or Tiffany?
You're good.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys. And again, thank you, Chad. Thank you, Tiffany, for inviting me. Always love to come and share information about NRCS. And definitely, I'm going to kind of roll through a lot of different things and a lot of different programs and not just focus on one. So let me just start real quick with our NRCS, our agency's mission and kind of our motto. Our motto is really helping people help the land. And in the end, really, I think as an agency, that's what we're here to do, is really help folks out there. And our mission is helping ranchers and farmers with their conservation efforts, using both our technical and our financial assistance to put good conservation on the ground. So again, our real point is helping people help the land, and we strive every day to make sure that we're doing that. I wanted to start off with partnerships, because nothing we do out here would be possible without partnerships. And of course, I think most people know who our best and our closest partner is, and that's our local soil and water conservation districts. And I hope everybody's familiar with them. And I think everybody's aware that we have 47 of them across the state of New Mexico. And they are our #1 partner, but they're not our only partner. So we try and get out there, we try and get to our different groups, we try and bring in different partners, and especially with the new soil health effort that's going on here in New Mexico, that's bringing in a lot of new and different partnerships. But I cannot talk about partnerships without at least saying our partnership with New Mexico Farm and Livestock Bureau, I think, has really taken great steps in the last few years. I really want to send a shout out to Ag in the Classroom with Tracy Curry. I think that has done an outstanding job, and we're glad to partner with that. And hopefully soon we will have a new agreement for New Mexico Ag Campaign with you all. And so really looking forward to moving that one forward. So partnerships, really, I am so thankful that NRCS, we have the flexibility in our budget to do a lot of different things with our partnerships. So really, why you all invited us to be here was to talk about programs. So I know we're not FSA, and I know Mike didn't talk about his programs. He really focused on CFAP, but between the two of us, we really have a lot of programs and a lot of opportunities to offer people. And definitely the first place you want to stop is with FSA. You want to make sure you have that farm and track number. You want to make sure that you visited that office, make sure that you have everything you need, and then come across the hallway and come to NRCS so we can talk about programs that we have, starting with EQIP, which I think everybody knows EQIP, and I'll do a little deeper dive into that one here in a little while. I also think most people are familiar with the Conservation Stewardship Program. That has been a really big program for New Mexico, really good. In fact, for a few years, New Mexico was actually #1 across the nation when it came to Conservation Stewardship Program. So that one, I think we're all familiar with. ACEP, the Ag Conservation Easement Program. I know a lot of folks aren't really hip on easements, but that has actually started to grow in New Mexico. The ag land easements, so that covers both the farmland and the rangeland. That has grown, as well as the wetland reserve easement program. So we have a few applications in this year for that. So we're excited to see this program grow. Not, again, we're not the big state when it comes to easements, but definitely a program that's growing here in New Mexico. One big program that we do have here in New Mexico is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. So this program, believe it or not, since the start of that has brought in over $23 million extra to New Mexico. And that's just NRCS money coming in. And for every dollar that RCPP brings in, there's actually a match to it somewhere. So whether it's a one-to-one match, and sometimes it's even more than a one-to-one match, it brings extra dollars to New Mexico, helps us put more conservation on the ground. Wanted to go through the list here that we have and let you all know that in this list, all of these RCPPs are following the old RCPP. And when I say old RCPP, that was the 2014 Farm Bill. And in that 2014 Farm Bill, they actually stole from other programs. So EQIP added to Regional Conservation Partnership Program, CSP added to it, ACEP added to it. All of these different programs added to make RCPP what it was. And so when you got into RCPP, you may have received an EQIP contract, or you may have received a CSP contract. But now, starting with the new RCPP, which will be starting this year, which now the request for proposals is actually out right now and will close in November, those new ones will have, you will have an RCPP contract. So it's a new way of how this program is going to work. But we're hoping that it continues, because this one really brings in a lot of partnership and a lot of partnership dollars and efforts. So the New Mexico Initiative for Rangeland, Forest Land, and Wildlife on ranches with federal lands, that was a big push, because we felt, and our partners felt that are in that initiative there, felt that we really weren't getting to those ranches and farms that had federal leases. And so this really lets us do a real focused effort on that. The Canadian River Watershed Restoration Project really focused on salt cedar, Russian olive removal along the Canadian River. North Central New Mexico Watershed Restoration Project really focuses on northern New Mexico. It's not just north central New Mexico, but just really northern New Mexico, looking at the wildfire issue and trying to do a lot of forest stand improvement, a lot of watershed work through that one. The San Juan non-native phreatophyte removal, that one, a lot of focus, just like the Canadian River watershed, looking at the salt cedar and Russian olive removal. Eastern New Mexico prairie grasslands, that is a new one, really focusing on areas where we've gone in and we've done a lot of great work to help the Lesser Prairie Chicken Initiative, really done a lot of good to clean these areas up, but a lot of the skeletons from those mesquites or creosotes that we went out there and took care of, those are still standing. So we want to go out there and clear those. And so that's what that initiative right there is going to be doing. We also have a partnership with NIFWIF, which is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation along the Pecos River. And that goes basically from north of Carlsbad all the way down to the Rio Grande. So it's a partnership between New Mexico, Texas, NIFWIF, New Mexico Association of Conservation Districts, playing a big role in the majority of these RCPPs. These last three I did want to talk about because they have that alternative funding arrangement that's listed there on the side. And that alternative funding arrangement really takes a lot of that program dollars and provides it to those entities and those partners to put the financial assistance dollars on the ground. So you don't have an EQIP contract, but you have an EQIP-like contract. And they still have to follow our standards and specs. They still have to make sure that they're meeting all of those, but it gives a lot of flexibility down there to the local level, to those local partners. This last one here is really a 5-state initiative. Really hasn't done a whole lot for here in New Mexico, but just wanted to make sure I listed it because it is available, but hasn't really hit off in New Mexico. Ooh, apologize. Wanted to talk about these last 3 programs right here. Mike talked about his emergency program, emergency conservation program. So I wanted to talk about the emergency watershed protection program. With the drought that we've been through, the fear of wildfires coming through, as well as the rains and the monsoons coming, we do have the emergency watershed protection program. It is not a one-on-one program with ranchers and farmers. It's more of a watershed effort. We need a sponsor. A lot of times the local districts, sometimes the county steps up and our sponsors, but just want to make sure everybody realizes that that program is there and it is available. A new program to us is this voluntary public access for habitat improvement program. We had 2 applications this year. One was funded. That one is up at the Santa Clara Pueblo. And so that voluntary public access will be moving forward in New Mexico. So we're hoping to get more applications as this moves forward. We'll see how that goes. And a big push in this new farm bill is this urban ag. Mike didn't talk about it, but we're going to have a new urban ag committee here in Albuquerque. We were one of 5 selected. So there is a big push for urban ag. It is a new one for us as well. So we'll see how this gets kicked off and what rules and policies and procedures are given to us as we move forward with this program. So just wanted to real quick talk about EQIP. So now I'm going to kind of dive into EQIP just so you all see kind of the nuts and bolts of where it sits here in New Mexico. So you see we have 2 sites there, or 2 sides. One is national initiatives, one is state initiatives. Some of these initiatives, even though they're called national initiatives, don't come with dollars. So we have to fund those out of our state allocation that's provided to us, as well as our state initiatives. Those are all funded from state dollars. So we try and play that match game to try and see where we can get the biggest bang for our buck. But my goal has always been here in New Mexico is to put 75% of the money that comes to New Mexico for EQIP, we put that out to the state, to the local work groups, to the local districts, making sure that those efforts that they say are the biggest priorities out there for the local work group, those are the things that are going to get funded at the local level. So 75% of our money goes out there. We're always shooting for it. Some years we don't quite get there just because we have to, if you see some of those stars there on the side, we are required to utilize 10% of our allocation for those socially disadvantaged, for those beginning farmer ranchers. And we're required to use 5% of our funds for things like the source water. I think there's the working lands for wildlife, I think it sits at about 5% that we have to utilize out of our funds. But again, my goal is to push those dollars out as far as we can. But just wanted you all to see that we do have these national initiatives pushed upon us, which we do. We enjoy them because it brings dollars to us, like that National Water Quality Initiative, Water Smart, the Joint Chiefs, all those bring dollars to us. But those state initiatives, things that at the local level may not seem as important, but they are at a state level. And so that's why we fund those things and have state initiatives. Where these things come from, folks, just want to make sure I put a shout out. One, the local work groups, be involved in those local work groups. Make sure that your voice is heard. Are there things that need to be moved from a state initiative, maybe down to a local initiative? Also at the State Tech Committee, that's where we talk about these state initiatives. How much money needs to be going to these things? What can we do differently? And what do we need to do differently to meet the needs out there of New Mexico's farmers and ranchers and ag community? Also wanted to share just real quick our top practices. And when I first looked at it, and actually we've been looking at it for the last 5 or 6 years, because I want to see where we are, where we're targeting those dollars. And this isn't saying this is where everything is going, but it's really saying, what are those big dollar practices and projects that are getting done out there on the ground? Of course, the big one, brush management, that's a high dollar one. But 61,000 acres in FY 2019 got done for over $3 million. But you also see right after that is farming practices, sprinkler systems, irrigation pipelines. We're helping with those things. So a little over $5 million there. Back to rangeland practices, watering facilities, fence, livestock pipelines, back to farming, forage and biomass planting. But then one that has creeped up in the last couple of years is its forest stand improvement. That's a high dollar practice, but it brings a lot of benefit to it, especially out there where we're worried about wildfires and other things like that. So this forest stand improvement has really creeped up in the last couple of years. But you can see there 2,000 acres that we did for about $2 million. It is a pricey project, but well, I think worth the investment. So just wanted to make sure I shared that with you all. Conservation Stewardship Program. I just wanted to share, let you all know that is a big and has been a big program here in New Mexico, a lot of acres. And that's when CSP, so before or in 2014 and before, CSP has always been an acre-based program. In the 2018 Farm Bill, they changed that to just a dollar-based program. So back in 14 and 15, when New Mexico was one of the big players, we were doing well over 900,000, almost 1 million acres each one of those years. And I think we did in 2017, a little over 900,000 acres as well. We kind of fell off in 18 and we fell off in 19, not doing as many acres, more around 300,000 to 400,000 acres in those years. Just wanted to show the overall dollar amount, the impacts Total right now in New Mexico, active contracts, 539. We had 17 new ones in 2019 with only 233,000 acres, but for a total payment out of $14.4 million in FY19. Of course, I keep talking about FY19 because we're not done with our fiscal year 20 yet, so I won't have those numbers and don't have them here in front of me. Just wanted to talk about CSP. If you all have been involved in CSP, it has enhancements, so not really practices to install, but enhancements to help move your ranch into the direction of really being an outstanding steward of the land. These top 4 enhancements are what we did in 2017, or at least that were contracted. So grazing management, so nut bell, wildlife friendly fencing, so retrofitting those fences to be wildlife friendly, monitoring rangeland health, as well as brush management were all big enhancements for CSP. I think we'll see some different ones. We'll probably see these same ones for nut bell, as well as the monitoring for CSP as we move forward in FY20 and 21. Again, it did change from the standpoint of it went from acre-based to now it's dollar-based. So we used to get, anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million acres for CSP. Now we get $10 million to obligate out to separate contracts. Another big change for CSP is that now federal lands are eligible to be included into those CSP contracts. So I think we're going to see a big growth in CSP as we move forward. Maybe even this will be a program where we'll be asking for more dollars to come to New Mexico because of the bump in the program. RCPP, just wanted to talk about RCPP and talk about the partnerships and the big changes that RCPP has brought to New Mexico. I mean, bringing $23 million in NRCS program dollars, so that means it's matching $23 million over those years. Doing a lot of great work out there. That picture to the right, you can see that's just a before and after. One is a creosote area. We treated that creosote. You go back, it's this beautiful lush grasslands just a few years afterwards. Of course, when we do get the rains and not going through drought, that tends to happen. But RCPP, great program, lots of flexibilities. Wanted to make sure you all were aware that the new request for proposals is out right now. It doesn't close till November. But if there's anybody out there thinking about RCPP or thinking of something different to do, different that we can do, here's the opportunity to bring some extra dollars to New Mexico. So I kind of started with partnerships, and I kind of wanted to wrap up with partnerships and really say that, there's nothing out there that any of us could do on our own. And as it goes for NRCS, we don't want to do it by ourselves. We want partners coming to the table. We want more people involved, making sure that we're doing the right thing out there in the landscape. And so I would ask you all, if you see an opportunity or if we're missing something that you all see, definitely voice your concerns. Sometimes it might make a difference. Other times we know it's there and we just can't do anything about it because we're moving in a different direction. But at least to know about it and to learn about it and hear about it from different folks is something that is important. Also wanted to say that we have done extra outreach grants as well. Now, I will say our target in those outreach grants has been at that local level. We want the local conservation districts to be applying for these grants, but it's open to anybody. So everybody's welcome to utilize these grants. This year, I think we had 12 or 15 applications, and we funded 7 of them for over $100,000. And so we're looking to do that again in February. So I would ask you all to think about that when it goes out. My public affairs specialist, Alicia Rodriguez, sends out a message far and wide. Anybody interested in those grants, definitely apply. We're trying to get it out to as many folks as we can and trying to increase our outreach efforts and definitely our educational efforts, whether it be for soil health or it just be for NRCS in general. And so I did just want to wrap up just by saying thank you all. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you all where NRCS is going. What we're doing. I didn't have anything targeted. I just wanted to kind of go through all of our different programs. Again, wrap up with saying, start with FSA. That's always a great place to start. Make sure you have your farm and track number. Make sure you have your acres correct in there. Walk across the hallway, visit with NRCS. See if there's any opportunities there for you. Because a lot of our programs have changed, we're going to have to change some of our application deadlines. And I think we're going to shoot for that for FY 2021, which is just right around the corner. And so just want to make sure that I wrap up and remind you all that I'm trying to stop sharing my screen here. Remind you all of those opportunities that are there, and just be open for any questions. I think I see one chat in there. Nope, it's just Tiffany saying if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. We're here. Mike and I are both here, open for any questions. Thank you all. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Tiffany, for the opportunity.
Mr. Montoya, as always, we appreciate it. This has been great information. Want to thank both Mike and yourself again. And at this time, we'll take some questions. If you have a question, please add that question to the chat feature. I think this has been very good information. So we'll stand by, see if we get any questions in. In the meantime, I'll throw a question out to you, Mr. Montoya. And maybe put you on the spot to talk a little bit about the conservation compliance role and any insights you have on that and any updates you might have on that. Oh, you're on mute. Hold on one second. I can't unmute you. There you go.
Okay, I think I'm there.
There you go.
You're talking about wetland compliance and the HEL compliance, I'm assuming
Correct.
is the direction that you're going. I think we're very fortunate that we don't have many HEL and wetland compliance issues here in New Mexico. We are still making sure that we're doing our portion, going out there for any new landowner. So I would make sure you remind folks that if they buy a farm or a ranch or make a trade, there are certain plans that need to be followed. If you're wanting to change those plans, come in and talk to the NRCS office. Make sure that you don't just check that box that says, oh yeah, I'm going to keep doing what they're doing, when really you have in your mind that you're really going to change that farm or ranch, because we do have to keep those 1026s updated. We have to keep the HEL and wetland compliance forms updated, and to keep you in compliance, to keep the rancher farmer in compliance. And we're really here to do that, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help you. So I hope that answered your question. It's really, it hasn't changed a whole lot. Our practices are still pretty much the same, and getting out there one-on-one with the rancher and farmer, and that's the only way we can do this.
No, that was perfect. And I think you gave good advice. If you're looking at making any changes, contact your local office and make sure everybody's on the same page so we don't run into problems here on the ground in New Mexico. So Mike, I might pose a quick question to you, and Xavier, you might have some insight just on the kind of the CFAP2. I know Mike mentioned it. Are you guys getting any indication from your leadership in DC on the reality of that?
Well, there's some discussion going on, that's for sure. And there would have to be more monies appropriated, so that would have to come through Congress. And so that's where I would ask you guys, to try to push that and see what y'all can get them to do to try to help ag out for one more segment at least, till everything gets opened back up. But there is discussions going on, I would say that, in Congress and in USDA. And there's still some money left over, so they may try to do a 2 with what they have left over. There's nothing specific or nothing ironclad or anything at this point. So it's all up for discussion. And so I would push it back to you guys to try to get Congress to do something, to get something else going, because that's where it's going to have to come from. But there has been discussion, if we do go into that, to try to make it just as simple and maybe even a little simpler than what we've done this time, to keep it that way, so that producers don't have to carry in a whole basket full of paperwork to try to show what they're doing.
Yeah.
What they're requesting. We want to keep it simple.
Well, and we all know that nothing was perfect in response to this pandemic, and you guys, you all did the best you could with what you had to work with, and you got it out quick. And so we applaud everybody for those efforts, for sure.
Well, it's taken everybody to make it happen. I'll say that.
Yeah. And it's also encouraging to see the money that has made it to New Mexico. So that's encouraging. I think Tiffany may have a question. Tiffany?
Can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
Mike, I was just curious to know, I know that a lot of the various crops that CFAP started with have been expanded to include other crops that were not considered. We grow some grapes here in New Mexico for wine, and I know that wine grapes are not considered an eligible crop for CFAP right now. So I was curious to know if you knew if there was potential for them to be included in the future, as well as are there any other crops that we need to advocate for that you're hearing our producers mention that are not eligible at the moment as well?
Well, I would agree. Grapes is a large crop in New Mexico, and wine grapes were not considered. Table grapes are considered. And I don't think there's very many table grapes in New Mexico. I think there may be one producer possibly, but I think table grapes were allotted in the last NAFO, I think, that came out. I would have to double check to make sure. And going forward, a lot of crops we grow in New Mexico are covered, but the biggest issue that we've had so far is harvest dates, because at April 15th, people are just starting to produce or plant even at that point. And so timing on harvesting and marketing is a big issue. And so if we go into CFAP 2, then those should be covered for a majority of New Mexico crops, because lettuce, onions are big issues that we have down south, spinach also. And most of those are covered under the commodities that we currently have. And so I would say just in the CFAP 2 with timing would probably cure most of the issues that we have with producers in New Mexico. You know, pecans and pistachios are covered already, which is a big part of the markets that we have. Alfalfa is another issue that came up, and I was hoping that it would be figured into it, but then that comes back to harvest, because even the first cuts, even the warm parts of the state, you don't have harvest until May. And so the timing's just not right for those crops. And so alfalfa hopefully would be in the CFAP 2. And I think if we need to push something, I think that would be one crop that we should probably put with the legislators to have them cover that in another, if they do another segment of money for CFAP. I don't know if I covered it all for you or not, Tiffany.
Perfect, thank you. No, that was excellent.
All right, well, seeing no further questions, I'd like to thank you both again for your time today. We certainly appreciate it. Always good to see you guys and hear from you. We'd like to thank those who attended our first Thursday, and would ask that you mark your calendars for our next First Thursdays seminar, which will be on October 1st. So we hope to see you all then. Mr. Montoya and Mr. White, very much appreciate you joining us today.